Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank FEDMA for hosting this event today. I think the relationship between data protection and the use of data for marketing has been a very hot topic for a decade now. The study presented today clearly reflects the rapidly evolving digital landscape. Consumers want a more personalized approach from marketing opportunities while respecting their right to privacy. It is in a way now the role of regulators and businesses to show consumers that this can be a mutually beneficial relationship and not two concepts that have to fight against one another. If this proposal is balanced correctly, I think one can make the other stronger but also more effective. I believe that there is a handful of core principles that can ensure that data protection and data innovation can remain competitive objectives and indeed form a part of a thriving but also healthy ecosystem. So here's a number of things that I think could lead to that outcome. First of all, an empowered, uninformed and digitally literate consumer base. Second, we would need a responsible corporate world that understands that trust, once lost, it's very hard to regain, and that sees data protection as part of its preferred business model. Thirdly, I think regulators that provide a future-proofed and easy-to-implement legal framework will be key. Because as we've witnessed in the past couple of weeks, we do live in a very rapidly changing world. One in which our consumers, particularly younger consumers, seek corporate responsibility as part of the business model. Going back to the study that's presented today, I think it shows that the majority of global consumers remain, so to say, data pragmatists. It is no doubt due to an increased reliance on online services and digital tools during the pandemic that this is the case. And this is why the report also shows that just over a quarter of global consumers are, so to say, data unconcerned, people who show little or no concern about their data privacy. But I think these numbers will evolve as individuals become personally impacted by data breaches, by online criminal activities, and by becoming more digitally literate. As citizens become more aware and more skilled when using digital services, I think they would also be more cautious in sharing their data. In the same time, I think that caution can become also confidence if companies address the issue transparently, if it's clearly addressed and in an honest manner. I think it's very interesting to point out that there has been a decline in concerns on sharing personal data since 2018, and 2018 was a significant year for sharing and shaping our views, laws, and values around data. The Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal, I think, produced thousands of headlines and unprecedented scrutiny on the use of data, and even prompted the appearance of Mark Zuckerberg before the European Parliament. In 2018, we also marked the entry into force of the GDPR discussion, and this is why there's no surprise that trust has slowly started to return. But businesses will not only continue to hold on to and increase that trust if they see trust, I think, as a meaningful part of their corporate values and strategies. So hopefully new legislation from the data strategy package, and namely DSA and the DMA, the AI Act and also the Data Act will prompt, so to say, a better rounded European data culture, one that establishes a more clear path to Europe becoming a global digital hub of innovation and economic prosperity. Maybe a European digital Silicon Valley, in a way, one that doesn't reside in one city, but in every corner of our European Union. But that package of legislation will only have added value and achieve this if it's implemented properly and in the spirit of its drafting. So we need additional resources, I think comprehensive advice and expert support for the data industry. And in this way, businesses can fully understand how new legislation fits in with their existing business model. We cannot have a repeat of the GDPR, which left too many businesses, particularly SMEs, overwhelmed and floundering. But this will not just be one piece of legislation, it will be many. So implementing each new law and its requirements cannot be a case of lifting a square peg into a round hole or a case of overlapping obligations. Instead, we must ensure we have a regulatory landscape that fits together perfectly, just like a jigsaw. And so the Commission, I believe, should therefore carry out an extensive mapping exercise that can help businesses through this transition. And I think the report also shows that the industry is still seen to benefit most from the data economy. So in this part, I think this belief exists because, in a way, it is true, but also because businesses and governments need to do more to increase the awareness and understanding of just how valuable data is to our economic future and therefore to the future of its consumers and their behavior. So showing the benefits of data processing to consumers, I think, is achievable, especially if you listen to what consumers want. And I think industry must show a shift from being the data protection compliant to being willing to be accountable and transparent. And it should want to provide better customer service and more tailor-made services, and in this way increase rewards for the consumer's loyalty. I think businesses should also explain as much as possible to consumer how their data is used and protected. And this should be done as clearly and as transparently, but also in an easily accessible way as possible. It would be important to have a greater focus on data quality by integrating tools that allow you to check and increase the quality of data. I think they should regularly review this data retention periods and invest meaningfully in cybersecurity. So businesses should seek to set the culture and not wait for it to be imposed upon them later down the line. Finally, I think we must look beyond what we are doing here in Europe and how we approach this issue with our international partners. I think there is no ignoring the fact that the last few years have brought complexity. The striking down of Privacy Shield and prospects of a new legislation are always lurking in the shadows. No matter who resides in the White House, tensions over the differing approaches of the EU and US towards data, I think we'll always court passionate debates and criticism. And the EU has the Charter of Fundamental Rights, the US has its own constitution. We are not the same entities. And yes, we need agreements for international data flows that are court-proof, but any agreement should pursue equivalence and not replication of EU law in a third country. So expecting a cut and paste of EU data law around the world, I think, is unrealistic and will cost as much needed time. So such an approach will be vital if the EU is to lead in this global movement towards creating an international data sharing standard among democratic allies. But the EU, in the same time, cannot operate in a silo. So it cannot build towering walls of gold standard regulation. Instead, what we need to build is bridges toward our allies that will allow us to drive forward our economy. And only then we will be able to phase down the competitive edge of China and others. So I believe there is reason to have optimism for Europe's data future. I think EU's data strategy shows that the EU has finally woken up to all the potential that the data holds. And as the ITRE Committee's rapporteur for the AI Act, I know the way of responsibility that comes with getting this new rules right. So the decision we make today, I think, will be defining the economy for the next decade. And discussions such as today's will ensure that the decisions are made with the voices of all stakeholders being heard, but also understood. So I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to the outcome of your discussion.